Her daughter-in-law told the world she built it all, without ever naming the woman who built it first. Diana March, founder, builder, and mother, didn't argue. The younger woman smiled in dove-gray silk, took the stage, and thanked the journey. By morning, the archived records were public, the bylaws enforced, and every spotlight redirected to the one they'd tried to erase. She didn't post a rebuttal. She posted the receipts. And when they asked who really owned the company, history answered mother-in-law first. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The banquet hall glowed like it belonged to someone else's life. Polished floors, white hydrangea centerpieces, a 6-tier cake standing with the same pride as the man beside it. Ethan Wallace smiled like a senator, one hand gripping his whiskey, the other resting lightly on Riley's lower back. His eyes scanned the room with casual ownership, pausing here and there to nod, wink, toast. Riley stood at his side, flawless in a navy silk dress, with an open back that whispered old money. Her smile was practiced, sharp, demure, camera-ready. She had become whatever this life required. The promotions, the benefits galas, the corporate wives who laughed like crystal breaking. All of it had trained her in the art of smiling without meaning it. A jazz trio played something elegant in the corner, and the air smelled faintly of vanilla candles and ambition. The room was full of Ethan's people. Executives, board members, men who smelled like leather seats and 30-year scotch. The kind who shook hands like they were making bets instead of promises. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. Riley took one glass and held it delicately, but didn't sip. She hadn't had a real drink in almost a year, not since. Riley, came a voice behind her, syrupy and smug. She turned, and there she was, Diana Knox. Tall, angular, and always dressed like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. Not the fashionable kind, the rich kind. Diana's dress was a blood-red sheath that dared anyone to challenge her presence. Her smile was thin and practiced, the way knives are practiced. "I didn't expect to see you here," Diana said, tone dripping with false innocence. "But then again, you never really go away, do you?" Riley let out a soft laugh, just shy of polite. "Ethan wanted the whole family here. You know how sentimental he gets." Family, the word landed between them like a dropped match. Diana tilted her head, her eyes scanning Riley from shoes to split ends. "Of course. And you're still wearing navy. It's consistent." Riley said nothing. She smiled. She had learned long ago that saying nothing was sometimes more devastating. Ethan appeared a moment later, oblivious or pretending to be. His hand found Riley's waist again. "Everything okay?" "Wonderful," Diana purred, brushing something invisible off his lapel. "I was just telling Riley how great it is that she's still involved." Ethan chuckled, tone diplomatic. "You know how it is. Can't do any of this without her." Riley smiled again. Her cheeks hurt. She watched Diana take a slow sip of her drink, eyes never leaving Ethan's face. There it was again, that look, the one that slipped through like fog under doors. She had seen it for the first time 14 months ago, long before the texts, before the locked phone, before the passive-aggressive distance that turned into full-blown silence. Diana had looked at Ethan like he was hers, even then, and he hadn't stopped her. A woman tapped her on the shoulder, Ethan's assistant, Kayla. Sweet, overworked, and perpetually trying to impress. "Riley, they're about to bring out the cake. You'll want to be near the front for photos." Riley nodded, excused herself, and walked slowly toward the raised platform near the head table. She passed a group of wives, all of them in pastel, who dropped their voices as she walked by. One of them didn't even bother. "I'd die before letting my husband keep his ex that close." Riley stopped at the mirror near the side entrance. She didn't look at her dress, or her hair, or the way her heels lengthened her legs. She looked into her own eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Stillness. Not sadness, not even bitterness. Just the clear, bone-deep calm of someone who had already made a decision. Ethan stood at the mic, tapping it for attention. "If I can steal just a minute, thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. This means more than I can say." He looked down at Riley, then at Diana. Riley raised her glass but didn't drink. She smiled, and it was a perfect smile, because tonight wasn't about celebration. It was the beginning of the end. 12 floors up, the boardroom didn't need to impress. It was quiet, window-wrapped, and sterile in that expensive way only old power understood. Polished walnut table. Understated black leather chairs. The skyline was framed like art, its meaning clear. If you're in this room, you already own the view. Diana stood with her back to the glass, one hand casually cradling a cup of black coffee. She didn't drink it. She rarely did. She just liked the heat. Across the table, Ethan leaned forward, brow drawn, jaw tight. "You could have told me," Diana didn't blink. "Told you what?" "That the leash you've been tugging on this whole time was actually mine," he laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You waited 12 years to play this card?" "I waited for the right time," she said coolly. "And Ethan, let's be honest, you always did perform best when you thought you were in charge." Silence swept over the room like a hush before thunder. The only other person present was Andre Shaw, the firm's corporate counsel, sitting stiffly near the end of the table. His suit was immaculate. His expression wasn't. "I went back through the charter last night," Andre said, voice quiet but firm. "Your bylaws were updated in 2015, but the original founding document still holds." Ethan's eyes snapped to him. And, Andre continued, sliding a folder across the table. "Diana has executive override authority, full rights to appoint or remove officers, final vote on all board decisions. It's buried, but it's binding." Ethan didn't touch the folder. His hands clenched beneath the table. "She handed you this company," Andre added, eyes flicking toward Diana. "You've just been the storefront." Diana turned, watching the clouds smear across the city's steel sprawl. "I gave you 12 years of runway, let you strut around in tailored suits, and give TED Talks about vision, but I always owned the landing gear." "You're burning everything down," Ethan said, voice rising. "No," she said calmly. "I'm finally lighting the match." The door cracked open. Lillian, head of HR and the oldest person in the building by 2 decades, stepped in without knocking. Her hair was a silver braid, her blouse buttoned to the throat. She'd known Diana since they were interns, under men who now sat on retirement boards. Lillian gave Ethan a slow, pitying look. "She brought you into this world, honey, and the boardroom. You really thought she wouldn't be the one to show you out?" Ethan opened his mouth, but Diana raised a finger, not to him, to Lillian. "Let's show him," she said smoothly. "Who signs the ladder?" Lillian placed a crisp white envelope on the table. Termination. Not his. Not yet. But close. Ethan stood abruptly. "You're doing this now? After everything? After Riley?" "Don't invoke her," Diana cut in. Her tone didn't rise, but the temperature in the room dropped. "You don't get to use her as cover for your collapse." Ethan's face flushed. "She doesn't even know." "She knows more than you think," Diana said, voice like satin over steel. "And she'll know everything soon." For the first time, Ethan looked shaken. Genuinely shaken. "You're bluffing," he said, trying to smile, but it was crooked. Weak. Diana stepped forward, slow and precise. "You think control looks like shouting. It doesn't. It looks like silence, patience, structure. I taught you everything you know about power, but I never taught you everything I knew." The door opened again. Andre stood. Riley walked in, hair pulled back, navy blazer over sharp white silk, eyes darker than they'd been last night. She glanced at Ethan, then at Diana, then down at the envelope. She smiled, not practiced this time, but real, thin, controlled, knowing. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "I wanted to make sure I read the board charter first." The intro music was crisp, too crisp, that kind of engineered optimism that felt like brushed brass and smiling ambition. Diana sat perfectly still, Bluetooth earpiece nestled in, both hands wrapped around a double espresso she wouldn't drink. Today, Riley's voice came through, smooth and rich with crafted warmth. "I want to talk about the climb, not the top, not the fall, just the climb, because that's what makes you." Diana didn't move, didn't flinch. her eyes locked on the tall windows across her home office. The sun caught the edges of her desk. Brushed concrete, minimal, heavy. Nothing about it was soft. Riley's podcast, 3 Floors Up, had exploded over the last year. Women in finance loved it. Authentic, bold, intelligent, Forbes had said. Diana had laughed at that, but not today. Not when this was the episode she'd promised would peel it all back. I met Ethan Wallace when we were both 26, Riley said, her voice threaded with just enough nostalgia. 2 kids trying to make something out of nothing. Diana's jaw flexed once. Her name wasn't mentioned. Not once. Not as founder. Not as investor. Not as the person who handed Ethan his title, desk, and first bonus check. People think success is about shortcuts or who you know, Riley continued. But it's not. It's about grit, independence, choosing to rise when nobody hands you the ladder. That line hit like a glass splinter. Diana hit pause, silence, sunlight. The subtle hum of the espresso machine across the loft. Her phone buzzed. Irene, want me to fix this before it goes wider? Diana stared at the screen. She didn't type immediately. Her fingers hovered. The pause was deliberate. Then, no. Let it land. Then we show the receipts. 2 hours later, the episode had broken 300,000 streams. It was climbing Spotify's business charts. The comments were full of praise. Modern mogul. No handouts. Built not given. The irony tasted metallic. In the dim of Diana's office, Andre laid a folder across her desk. Same one he'd shown Ethan, only this time it was thicker. Found it, he said, tapping the corner. Press release, January 1997. Diana Knox, sole founder. Ethan wasn't hired until 2013. Riley, 2016. She flipped the page, slow and methodical. There she was, younger, sharper, and still furious at the world for underestimating her. Black turtleneck. Cold smile. A caption that read, Founder Diana Knox says she's betting on herself, and the odds are good. Andre leaned back, expression unreadable. It's like they pulled the author off the book and slapped their faces on the cover. She thinks public perception is the same thing as truth, Diana murmured. Isn't it? He asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she scrolled back to the episode, played a midsection. We were equals, Riley said. Partners. Everything I built alongside him. We earned it. Diana's voice was calm, but clipped. She just deleted me, Andre nodded. Not a single mention, not even a ghost reference. The office door creaked as Lillian walked in, holding her tablet. Eyebrows already raised. I heard it, she said, without preamble. Twice. Diana looked up. She deleted the author from the story, Lillian said, half laughing. And now she's selling the plot. She knows her audience, Andre said. So do I, Diana replied. And they like drama. By evening, Riley's episode was featured on Morning Market Minute. A still photo of her and Ethan laughing at some charity gala filled the screen. Relationship goals and business moguls, the anchor said cheerfully. Power couple? Looks like it. Diana stood in the wings of her private office studio, watching the segment play on mute. Her hair was tied back, makeup minimal, a folder clutched in one hand. It was time. She tapped the microphone twice. The camera crew nodded. Rolling. She looked straight into the lens. Not soft, not corporate. Steel. People love stories. They'll believe the first one they hear, especially if it's clean. Marketable, wrapped in navy and tied with a bow. She held up the press release. But there's a difference between a good story and the truth. The ballroom was full of ambition. Glass trophies lined the stage wings. Rows of white folding chairs glinted under overhead lights. A branded step and repeat buzzed with flashbulbs and murmured interviews. Somewhere near the back, waitstaff in white gloves served canapes on slate trays. Careful to move silently, Riley adjusted her mic. Her dress was dove gray, corporate enough to signal credibility, soft enough to disarm. She stood on stage alongside 2 other women, a startup founder who specialized in green shipping, and a fintech CEO half her age with a VC pedigree, and a jawline built for business television. The event was titled Women Who Build. A month ago, Riley had thought this panel would be her coronation. Now she wasn't so sure. Backstage, Kayla watched the live stream from a side monitor, a clipboard pressed to her chest. Her eyes hadn't moved in minutes, because just behind the panel's long white table, projected across the entire LED wall, was the MarchTech logo, bold serif font in burnished steel. Founded by Diana March, not Diana Knox, not Ethan's old mentor, not a silent investor. Founder. And the Shell LLC that had paid for this event's largest sponsorship slot, quietly registered 3 weeks ago as March Origin Fund, a charitable education initiative whose sole member, if anyone cared to check, was Diana herself. Riley hadn't seen it. Not yet. The moderator smiled as she shuffled her note cards. A woman in her late 50s with a warm voice and precise diction. Her name was Valerie Beck. Her resume spanned 3 decades in venture, but what mattered more was this. She'd cut her teeth in Diana's early accelerator program. She knew exactly who built MarchTech and who didn't. So Riley, Valerie said, her tone smooth and neutral. You've talked on your podcast about the challenges of starting out. Funding, infrastructure, mentorship. Tell us, in those first critical years, who or what helped keep the lights on? The room hushed. A camera panned in for a tight shot. Riley hesitated. A half second, then another. She began, adjusting the mic again. We worked hard. Ethan and I. It wasn't always easy. But we leveraged resources, personal savings, friends who believed in us. Valerie's eyebrows ticked up just slightly. Oh, she said gently. And did any of those friends say, own 51% of your company? Riley blinked, smiled tightly. I think what matters, she said, steering hard, is that we never took shortcuts. Every dollar, every late night. Behind her, the logo shifted. A new image filled the wall. An archival photo of the original MarchTech co-working space, early 2000s. A single row of steel desks, a corkboard full of sticky notes. In the center, arms folded, stood Diana, 20 years younger, staring into the camera like it had already underestimated her. Of course, Valerie said smoothly. Some people would say there's no such thing as a solo climb, that there's always a ladder, often built by someone else. A low murmur rippled across the crowd. Kayla's eyes widened. She looked toward the control booth, trying to see who had approved the deck. But there was no one to blame, because technically it had all been pre-approved by the event's largest donor. Diana, backstage in a private greenroom suite. Diana watched with one leg crossed over the other, coffee in hand, eyes sharp. Her face gave nothing away. Riley tried again. I think, when we talk about support, it's important to focus on what people do, not what they claim. Everyone wants credit after the fact. Valerie didn't blink. Of course. That's why documentation matters. The next slide clicked on. 1997. Incorporation filing. Diana March, sole founder. 2013. Ethan Wallace hired as VP of Partnerships. 2016. Riley Wallace onboarded as Director of Communications. The audience was quiet now, entirely still. Riley reached for her water. Her hand trembled slightly, just enough to notice. She took a sip, smiled again, brittle this time, and said nothing. The boardroom was warm with filtered sunlight and false civility. Ethan stepped in with a half smile and no tie. He'd picked the tailored navy today, a deliberate choice, subtle signal. Leadership, composure, likability. In his mind, this was supposed to be a quarterly touch base, maybe a few budget pivots, performance applause, the usual handshakes. Instead, the air felt thinner than it should have. Andre sat at the far left, flipping slowly through a legal pad. Irene was next to him, unreadable behind dark glasses and a white blouse with sleeves rolled to the elbows. Across from them, 2 junior board members. One looked like he'd swallowed something sharp. And at the head of the table, unblinking and perfectly still, was Diana. Not a trace of preamble, not a greeting, just her voice. Let's begin. Ethan blinked. Sure, I thought this was more of a... Effective today, she said, cutting him off without even lifting her eyes. We'll be implementing several strategic realignments. Andre didn't nod. didn't move, just kept flipping the pad like the rhythm grounded him. Irene leaned forward slightly. Ethan shifted his weight. Strategic. In what way? Diana glanced toward the door. It opened instantly. A woman in a sharp gray suit stepped in. Mid-30s, composed, carrying a single folder. She nodded to no one. "This is Tamsin Cole," Diana said. "Your new vice president of product development. She'll be reporting directly to me." Silence crackled. Ethan stared at the woman, then at Diana. "I'm sorry, my VP." "Correct. I lead product." "You oversaw product," she said, still calm, still seated. "Tamsin will lead it." He let out a small laugh. "Are you serious?" Diana finally looked up. Her stare was ice and iron. Was I laughing? The room didn't move, not a whisper. Tamsin placed her folder neatly on the table, then took the seat 2 spots down from Diana. She didn't smile at Ethan. She didn't need to. "This is," Ethan began, voice clipped. "This is retaliatory. You think I don't see that?" "I think you're used to seeing everything after it's happened," Diana said coolly. "Does Riley know about this?" "Do you?" Diana countered. Tone suddenly harder. "Because it appears you've been operating on assumptions instead of authority for years." Ethan opened his mouth, then paused. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. "Riley, what's happening? Why did Kayla just say you got demoted?" He stared at the screen, thumbs hovering, then Diana's voice again, slow, unhurried. "If you're texting her, don't bother. She's watching from a mile away. And I'm not interested in just rearranging titles, Ethan. I'm changing the structure." Irene finally spoke, her voice measured but low. "This company's always had a two-face problem. Public charisma, private chaos. That ends now." Andre pushed a slim folder across the table. Inside, new org charts, new reporting lines, new budget lines, all bypassing Ethan. Ethan's voice dropped. "You can't just phase me out." "Not phasing," Diana said. "Redirecting." He looked at Andre. "You're co-signing this?" Andre didn't look up. "I'm enforcing it." "You're making a mistake," Ethan said quietly, chest rising. "No," Diana said. "I'm correcting one." Ethan gripped the back of the chair but didn't sit. He stayed standing, rigid, rattled, and for the first time in a long time, irrelevant. Irene turned a page in her notes. "One more thing. All public-facing assets are being reviewed. Your thought leadership series is on pause. Legal's going through your LinkedIn claims as well." He scoffed. "That's petty." "That's accurate," Andre said flatly. "Let's not confuse the two." Ethan turned back toward Diana, but she was already standing. The meeting was over. She picked up her folder, nodded at Tamsin, and walked out without another word. Riley's text buzzed again. "Do not say anything without calling me first." He stared at it, then shoved the phone in his pocket and stayed frozen, halfway between the head of the table and the door that had just closed on him. The boutique smelled like champagne and money, a place that pretended to sell fabric but really sold belonging. Riley stood before a mirrored wall, one arm lifted as a clerk pinned the sleeve of a cream blazer. The lighting was designed for praise. Everything shimmered just slightly softer than truth. The card machine beeped once, then again, then stopped. The sales associate smiled too politely. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wallace. It seems there's an issue with the card." Riley's own smile didn't falter. "That can't be right. Try it again." A pause. The same beep. Declined. The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it was public. The woman in the next fitting room turned her head. Someone adjusted a hanger just to have something to do. Riley's jaw tightened. "Run it as credit," she said evenly. "It's a corporate account." The associate's screen blinked red. "It appears the account was closed this morning." Something cold slid down Riley's spine. She stepped aside, pulled her phone from her bag, and dialed. Ethan answered on the second ring. "Hey, I'm in the middle of—" "What did you do?" she snapped. "Why is my card being declined?" He exhaled, the kind that carried too much weight. "Riley, don't start." "Don't start?" "I just had to walk out of Marla James with a declined corporate card in front of 3 women who work for me. You humiliated me." "I didn't," Ethan's voice dropped. "Riley, listen." The spousal account clause. It was tied to my compensation package. I know what it was tied to, she hissed. It was tied to me. There was a pause on his end, short and bitter. No, Ethan said finally. It was tied to her. Riley froze. Diana? She shut it off this morning. Irene confirmed it. You're joking. I think my mom's serious this time, he said quietly. You shouldn't use that card anymore. Unbelievable. Riley's voice cracked, low and sharp. She's cutting me off like some intern she's disciplining. After everything I've done for her company? For her company, Ethan repeated. Exactly. The call ended with no goodbye, just air, heavy and hollow. Riley lowered the phone, her reflection glaring back at her. Perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect posture, and no liquidity. The clerk approached tentatively. Would you like to try another form of payment? Riley smiled, razor thin. No, I'll just take my things. But there were no things. She walked out empty-handed. Across town, Diana stood before a wide window in her office, phone on speaker, arms folded. Irene's voice came through. Spousal allowance account, closed. Auto transfer canceled. Notification sent to both parties. Total remaining balance, 0. Diana didn't look away from the skyline. And her credit? Tied to Ethan's executive tier, Irene replied. Which no longer exists. Good, Diana said softly. This was never a gift. It was a lease. Andre looked up from a nearby chair. You realize that'll go public. So will her reaction, Diana said. That's the point. The line clicked off. For a moment, there was quiet. Only the sound of the city pressing against the glass. Lillian entered without knocking, a coffee in hand and an expression that bordered on amusement. She called him already, Lillian said. I heard through Kayla. I assumed she would. She's angry. She's frightened, Diana corrected. Anger's just the mask that fits faster. Lillian set the coffee down. You know, for someone who spends her podcast episodes preaching about independence, she's remarkably bad at living it. Diana's lips curved faintly. People who perform self-sufficiency usually rehearse dependence in private. Lillian chuckled once, then sobered. You don't get to mock the bank while cashing its checks. She did that every week. Diana nodded, her gaze still on the skyline. Not anymore. She turned, finally meeting Lillian's eyes. Let the accountants close every auxiliary under her name. If she wants her independence, she can start with her own wallet. That night, in the dark hush of her apartment, Riley scrolled through her banking app. Balance, 0. Every shared account, locked. Every statement, once stamped EW authorization, now listed as access denied. She looked around, at the designer couch, the soft lighting, the framed magazine cover of her and Ethan smiling under the headline, Visionaries in Partnership. It looked like wealth, but it was all borrowed air. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Diana March. Independence starts with accountability. You've been paid in stories long enough. Riley stared at the message until the screen went dark. Her own reflection staring back, unblinking, stripped of its gloss. The post dropped at 9:04 a.m. A crisp photo of a Marchtech filing from 1997. The grainy document bore a company seal, a signature in blue ink, and one name, Diana March, founder and principal engineer. The caption read, Before the podcast, before the panels, before the partnership. There was a woman who built the code, banked the risk, and kept the lights on alone. Know your history. By 9:12 a.m., it had over 40,000 likes. At 9:17, Irene called. Do we respond? She asked, calm but clipped. Diana sipped her coffee, eyes on her laptop. She was scrolling the thread, screen captures of Riley's podcast, side by side with screenshots of Diana's early technical diagrams, timelines, archived emails. The internet had built its case in under 15 minutes. Diana didn't look up. Not yet. By 9:35, the term Marchtech gatekeeping was trending on LinkedIn. By 9:48, a financial blogger posted a side-by-side analysis of Riley's latest podcast, quote, We built it from nothing, next to a public grant award given to Marchtech in 1998, with Diana's name listed under Innovation Lead. At 10:02, someone uploaded a video montage. Old panel clips of Diana from the early 2000s. giving dry, sharp answers in a black turtleneck, juxtaposed against Riley's heavily produced podcast studio with soft lighting and Instagram-ready makeup. No one edited the video with rage. They edited it with receipts. Across town, Ethan sat on the edge of his living room couch, scrolling too fast, deleting too slowly. Old interviews, archived from years ago, all boasting the same narrative. We built this together. Riley brought the heart. I brought the strategy. We rose without a net. He pulled up a YouTube channel with his face and 5 thumbnails. Deleted. Logged into Medium. 2 essays from 2018. Deleted. A tweet from 2020. Success isn't inherited. It's earned. Deleted. None of it helped. Not now. He texted Riley. Call me. We need to address this. No answer. He stood, moved to his bookshelf, pulled down a dusty leather binder from the March Tech 20th Anniversary Gala. Inside, the original invitation card. Diana's name embossed in silver across the cover. A legacy of bold beginnings. He set it down like it burned. Irene closed her laptop and looked over at Diana, who was sitting perfectly still in her corner office, the city humming outside the windows. You know this isn't just trending, Irene said. It's sticking. I know. They're calling Riley the face of filtered legacy. Diana smiled faintly. That one's clever. They're saying Ethan's gone dark. He should stay there. Irene raised an eyebrow. We really aren't saying anything. No, Diana said calmly. Because when a liar deflates, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits. Back at March Tech's media room, Lillian scrolled through the same thread. She leaned over to Andre, who was chewing a pen cap and watching a screen like it was a court trial. They're unearthing everything, she said. Old patents, W-2s, archive blogs, even her .edu email signature from '96. Andre whistled. Digital amnesia doesn't work when you archive everything, Lillian snorted. She tried to rebrand her way out of history, but history keeps receipts. On screen, another clip dropped into the thread. A previously unreleased keynote from Diana in 2004. She was younger, sharper, more visibly exhausted. The line hit like a brick. I don't want a seat at the table. I want the damn deed to the building. It went viral by 10:44. Riley finally opened her phone at 11:02. 12 missed calls, hundreds of tags. A DM from her podcast producer. We're getting bombarded. Should we pull the latest episode? Her throat felt tight. Her hands were cold. She scrolled through the post. The comments were slicing her open slowly. Where was this Diana in the podcast? We've heard enough from the people who married power. Let's hear from the one who built it. Podcast privilege. It's giving curated memory loss. She tried to type a response. Stopped. Tried again. Deleted it. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. She let it ring, then turned it over. The screen went black, but her reflection stayed. Flawless, terrified, shrinking. Back in Diana's office, her phone finally buzzed with a text from Andre. We might have broken them. Diana stared at it, then typed back. Not yet. She slid her phone face down and opened her laptop. Because this wasn't over. This was mid-chapter. The article dropped at 7:02 a.m., not on a gossip blog, not on Twitter, on the official March Tech newsroom page. It was titled, Foundations, the Story of How We Started. A clean serif header, no byline, just the company's insignia, a brushed steel M on black, and a 6-paragraph introduction written in Irene's glass-cut quiet power tone. It began with facts. Founded January 1997, founder Diana March, funding source, self-financed through inheritance and freelance software contracts. Location, a 1-room rented unit above a closed florist in downtown Chicago. Then came the photos, high-resolution scans of handwritten code annotated with margin notes, receipts for hardware bought on installment, a Polaroid of Diana with 3 early hires, all seated on mismatched chairs under exposed wiring and optimism. By paragraph 3, it was clear this wasn't just a company history, it was a timeline correction. Year 1 through 6 were detailed with milestones, prototypes, crashes, breakthroughs. Ethan's name appeared once as a hire in year 7. Riley, year 9. No adjectives, no opinion, no rage. Just a cool, clean edit to the record. By 8:04 a.m., Fast Company picked it up. By 8:37, Inc. reposted with the headline, "The Woman Behind March Tech, Diana March's Silent Rise." By 9:10, Riley's PR firm terminated their contract. The email was 2 sentences long. In light of recent reputational complications and client-side inconsistencies, we're no longer able to represent Ms. Wallace, effective immediately. At 9:13, Riley sat at her kitchen island staring at the subject line. PR relationship closed. Account flagged as high risk. Her inbox pinged again. Podcast sponsors pulling out. Speaking engagement postponed. A DM from a close contact. "You should take a break from commenting. It's hurting you more." She hadn't spoken. She hadn't been allowed to. And somehow, she was still being erased. At March Tech HQ, Kayla stood at the media wall, rereading the article for the 3rd time. She hadn't said anything at first. She'd been with the company 5 years. Just long enough to know whispers, but not facts. She'd always assumed Diana was just one of the early execs who faded out. But the pictures, the bank statements, the pixelated faxed contract from the first investor who called Diana, the kind of risk I'd bet my retirement on, they told a different story, a real one. Kayla turned slowly and walked to Diana's office. The door was open. Diana was behind her desk, pen in hand, reviewing a grant proposal. Kayla stepped in. "I read the piece." Diana looked up. "You and half the internet, apparently. It's powerful." Kayla hesitated, then stepped forward. "I never knew, but I'm proud of you." Diana studied her for a moment, then offered the faintest smile. "Thank you. I think a lot of people are going to see it differently now." "No," Diana said softly. "They're going to see it accurately." Kayla nodded and stepped out. Her eyes were glassy but dry. For the first time, the woman she worked for didn't feel like an enigma. She felt like an anchor. At 10 a.m., Irene stood behind a podium in a small press room. No cameras, just audio recorders and reporters with pens. A low-key media briefing, by design. She adjusted the mic once, spoke once. No one in this room would tolerate being written out of their own history. Ms. March simply decided to write it back in. Then she walked out. It was all she needed to say. At 10:37, a trending tweet hit 100K likes. This isn't a rebrand. This is the original cover finally being put back on the book. Diana stood in the glass hallway outside the March Tech R&D wing. Employees walked past her with sideways glances. Not fearful, not cold. Just newly aware. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Because truth, once visible, doesn't beg for attention. It demands context. Her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Board review in 30 minutes. Subject line, ethical leadership, internal accountability, and long-term vision. Diana tapped the screen, closed it, and turned. Heels echoing down polished floors like punctuation. The private conference room wasn't on any public floor plan. No plaque on the door, no sign of branding, just a narrow slit of glass and a keypad lock. Diana had designed it herself. Not as a war room, but a place where decisions stopped echoing. Ethan was already seated when she walked in. He stood reflexively, too fast. "Thanks for meeting," he said, but his voice cracked halfway through. Diana sat, slow and composed. She placed a folder on the table, didn't open it. Across from her, Ethan looked tired. The curated stubble had overgrown, and his suit hung wrong on the shoulders. Something about him looked deflated, like a balloon that had popped quietly, without ceremony. "You're sabotaging me," he said. Diana tilted her head. "No, I'm correcting the record. You could have done it without this." He gestured vaguely, toward nothing and everything. "I did try," she said calmly. "You just didn't notice, or didn't care." He slumped back in the chair. "You win, okay? You win. This was never a game. You humiliated us." "No," Diana said, eyes locked on his. "You did that yourselves. I just let the light in." The silence was so tight it buzzed. Then the door opened and Andre stepped in. Tailored, precise, carrying 2 documents. 1 blue folder. 1 black. 2 paths, he said, sliding them forward. Demotion with retained equity, VP title, no public-facing authority, or resignation. Quiet. NDA sealed. Legacy, soft exit. Ethan looked between them, hands unmoving. Your choice, Andre added, but you need to pick today. He stared at Diana. I built the brand. No, she said. You wore it like a suit. A long pause. The air tightened. He reached for the blue folder. His fingers hovered. Then he signed. One flick of the pen. Andre nodded once, collected the papers without flair. Effective Monday. Diana stood. Ethan didn't. Can I at least keep the press title? He asked quietly now. It's ceremonial anyway. She stopped at the door. If you want titles, she said, not turning around, earn one without erasing someone else's. Then she walked out, one footstep at a time, the lock clicking behind her like punctuation. 2 hours later, Diana stepped out of the building. Evening air, quiet. A single black car waiting curbside. She didn't notice the figure until she crossed the lobby. Riley. Standing outside the glass doors of Diana's building, arms crossed, jaw locked. Security had already clocked her. Do you want me to move her? The doorman asked. No, Diana said softly. She'll move herself. Outside, Riley saw her through the glass. Tried to wave. Diana didn't return it. She walked past, deliberate, elegant, unflinching. Riley's mouth moved. Please, she whispered. Diana stepped into the car, closed the door, and let the glass rise between them like a guillotine. Riley stood there, blinking under streetlight, mascara clinging too tight to lashes that didn't blink. The car pulled away. Diana didn't look back. The document sat across the table, printed on ivory stock and bound in slate gray leather. Diana didn't reach for it. She already knew what it said. Her estate attorney sat at the other end of the long conference table, pen uncapped, posture perfect. We finalized the new language, he said. As instructed. Diana nodded. Walk me through it. He flipped open the portfolio. Upon your death or declared incapacitation, control of MarchTech's residual equity, remaining trusts, and posthumous licensing rights will transfer in full to your designated successor. He turned the page. Named here as Kayla Brighton, the words were clean, simple, powerful, a name no one had expected. Not Riley, not Ethan, especially not Ethan. And if contested, Diana asked. He smiled faintly, the way only attorneys do when a clause is elegant and lethal. Any challenge, formal or informal, triggers a redirection clause. All assets, every share, every IP contract, every cent, transfer immediately to a newly registered nonprofit. He slid the final page forward. WIT, Women in Tech, Inc., founded. Last Thursday, founder Diana March, mission, fund scholarships, mentorships, and seed stage grants for women who build. Diana didn't blink. Perfect. Across the room, Lillian watched from her seat by the window, sipping coffee like it was a front row ticket. That's not revenge, she said finally. That's infrastructure. Diana smiled, barely. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, she said. It's what you design to outlive the people who tried to rewrite you. That afternoon, Riley's name flashed across a public grant registry, but not as a donor, as context. March Scholars Program, location, Benton Falls, IL, initial donation, $250,000, founded by Diana March. The description read, to support young women in Riley Wallace's hometown who aspire to careers in engineering, data science, and software development, because proximity to power should never be a substitute for building it. Kayla stood in Diana's office doorway, hands tucked into the sleeves of her blazer. I just got the email, she said quietly. Diana looked up from her desk. The trust document, she asked. Kayla nodded, stepping in slowly. Her eyes were wide, but not shocked. More like someone realizing they'd been seen for the first time. You didn't have to. I know, Diana said, but you show up, you listen, you build, you don't posture. I never expected anything. Exactly. A beat passed. Then Kayla crossed the room and hugged her, not awkwardly, not for show, tightly, gratefully. When she pulled back, her eyes were glassy. They don't speak for me. They never did. Diana nodded, steady. I know. A Across town, Ethan sat in the dim light of a corner office he no longer had access to after 6 p.m. He'd gotten the email too, an automatic legal notification, standard for former executives with vested equity. He didn't forward it to Riley, didn't comment, didn't throw his phone. He just stared at the clause. In the event of any claim to familial, marital, or reputational entitlement, assets default to Wit, Inc. It was like she'd written a will just to close the door one more time. He let the phone slide face down onto the table and leaned back, exhaling once. Whatever he'd thought Diana might still leave behind for him, in memory, in mercy, it was gone now. And she'd put it in writing. Later that night, Diana stood at the edge of her balcony, a glass of water in hand, the skyline exhaling around her. It wasn't peace, it was design, and peace came after that. Inside, her phone buzzed. Kayla again. A photo from the old intern archive. It was a picture of Diana from 15 years ago. Hair pulled back, no makeup, grease on her hands, kneeling beside a gutted server tower. Kayla's message read, "They don't know the half of what you built, but I do." Diana smiled, then turned her phone off. The episode had been live for 13 months. It was the most downloaded in the podcast's history. A slick, edited monologue titled, "How We Built From Zero." Now it had a disclaimer. By noon, it was gone. Riley found out from her assistant. They pulled the series, the girl said, not meeting her eyes. The whole thing. Riley blinked once. "What do you mean, pulled?" "Like, removed. From the hosting platform. Every episode is offline. It wasn't just Spotify. It was Apple, Stitcher, Overcast. Even the vanity site her PR team had set up to mirror the podcast feed. All redirected to a single page now. This content has been removed due to verified concerns of factual misrepresentation." Underneath it, in smaller text, all related advertising agreements have been suspended pending investigation. An independent journalist had published the story that morning, the one that tied it all together. Timeline inconsistencies, interview contradictions, funding claims that unraveled when matched to Diana's public grant receipts. Screenshots of the article went viral in under an hour. One tweet read, "When you build your brand on borrowed blueprints, don't act surprised when the permit gets revoked." Another, "Turns out the we and we built it had a name, and it wasn't Riley." Across MarchTech HQ, Irene stood beside Diana in the executive mezzanine overlooking the open concept floor. "She made herself a brand," Irene said, not unkindly. "Brands need proof." Diana didn't respond. She just watched the quiet rhythm of the office. People typing, walking, solving, building. No one was looking at her. And yet, everything was looking different. "You're not going to say anything?" Irene asked. "No," Diana said softly. "I already did. I just used receipts instead of press releases." By 4:22 p.m., the keynote invitation was rescinded. Riley had been scheduled to speak at the Women in Innovation Gala in San Francisco. An email arrived with formal regret. Her name removed from the schedule. The event cited alignment concerns. By 5:41 p.m., her book deal was paused. Her agent called. "They're reevaluating the contract. It's not dead. But they want to see if anything else surfaces." Riley said nothing. Her mouth opened, closed. By 6 p.m., she wasn't trending anymore. And that was worse. At her apartment, she played the last surviving clip on her phone. An old promotional video for 3 floors up. The opening lines echoed in her voice. "It's not about how you start. It's about how you rise." The screen flickered. Content unavailable. She let the phone fall beside her. Andre sent Diana a one-line update. "Hosting platform confirms permanent takedown. Legal team is satisfied. No further action needed." She read it once, then archived it. There was no triumph left in this, just completion. In the early evening, Kayla walked into Diana's office holding a mug of tea and a tablet. "They're saying you should do an interview," she said, smiling faintly. Diana raised an eyebrow. "I won't," she replied. "Good," Kayla said, "because this wasn't a PR stunt." "No," Diana said. "It was a correction." Kayla nodded. "It feels like the record can finally breathe." Outside the office window, the sun was setting. Long shadows stretching over concrete. Diana turned back to her screen. She wasn't watching Riley fall. She was watching her team rise. At 7:10 p.m., Riley opened her inbox one last time. There were no sponsor messages, no red notification dots, just a single unread email with no subject line. The body said, "No platform can hold a story that forgets its source. No name, no sign-off. Just that." She didn't reply. She just closed the laptop slowly, as if trying not to hear the final click. There was no statement, no cancellation, no formal obituary, just quiet. Riley's speaking events stopped booking, one by one. The calendar, once crowded with flight confirmations and prep calls, now sat hollow, no rejections, just no replies. At first, she blamed the cycle. Summer's always slow, then, there's too much noise in the space right now. Then nothing. Her inbox became a list of unanswered check-ins, 3 follow-ups per contact. Then the blue dots stopped appearing altogether. She tried launching something new, a digital workspace for female founders, minimal design, motivational copy. The logo looked like it had been designed to win Pinterest boards. She went live on Instagram, posted reels of herself at her desk, smiling again, even cried once, just enough to show humility. But the metrics were quiet. Follower count plateaued. The email list trickled. No investor calls came. No buzz, no hate, just boredom. Her team shrank by attrition. Designers stopped replying. An assistant she never learned the name of quit by Google Calendar. Nothing was taken from her. It simply didn't come back. Across the city, in the light-drenched corner of Diana's loft, Kayla wheeled a suitcase toward the guest room. "I figured it was time," she said. "That apartment's not home. It's a waiting room." Diana didn't respond immediately. Just looked at the suitcase. A navy roller bag with a cracked handle and stickers on the side from cities Kayla had barely had time to enjoy. "I'm tired of walking on eggshells around people who ask me to dim down just so they feel big," Kayla added. Diana gave a small nod. "You don't have to shrink here." Later that evening, they sat on the patio. No wine, just tea and open laptops. Light bouncing off the brick wall across the alley. Kayla glanced over. "You think Riley knows?" "That you're living here?" Diana asked. "No, that she's not relevant anymore." Diana gave a non-committal shrug. Some people don't feel it when the spotlight fades. They think they're just in shadow, but sometimes the power's just off. Kayla smiled. "And you didn't even flip the switch." "I didn't have to," Diana said. "I built the circuit board." In a different room, Lillian sat cross-legged on the floor with a stack of Kayla's internship portfolios spread across the rug. "These are clean," she said, tapping a PDF mock-up. "Good layout. Strong eye." Kayla beamed. "Don't apologize for being competent," Lillian added. "I'm just not used to people like you reading my stuff." "Well," Lillian said, standing slowly, "get used to it. I'm the gateway dragon for 3 accelerator programs. You've got interviews in June." Kayla blinked. "Wait, you sent these out already?" "Of course I did. You were sleeping on your own narrative. I just ran it through the printer." At the law offices of Rake, Langston, and Ward, Andre locked the safe behind the estate archive. The will had been updated. Signed, indexed. The no contest clause now airtight. Any attempt to rewrite it would vaporize the estate, redirecting it instantly to Wit Inc. He'd seen a lot of wealthy people try to punish the living with what they left behind. But Diana, she was architecting permanence. He placed the file in the drawer, shut the cabinet, and didn't look back. Riley stood at her window. Her phone buzzed, a notification from her own calendar. It said, "Panel rehearsal, Women's Founders Weekend, canceled." She didn't delete it, just stared, then opened her email again. The last email she sent, to a sponsorship lead, had no response. She hit refresh. Nothing. She refreshed again. Still nothing. The inbox had nothing left to say. Back in Diana's kitchen, Kayla stirred oat milk into coffee. Her laptop pinged. New email. Subject line, Women in Engineering Accelerator, Round 1 interview. She let out a small sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a laugh. Just the sharp inhale of someone who finally felt like the future was talking back. She turned to Diana, who was placing a glass on the drying rack. "I got it." Diana looked at her. "Good. Get ready." Kayla blinked. You're not surprised? No, Diana said softly. I just plan for what I know will happen. The meeting lasted 14 minutes. Ethan showed up in a navy blazer and a look rehearsed in elevators. Apologetic, hopeful, slightly wounded. He brought no resume, just nostalgia. I'm not asking for my old title, he said. Just a role, a place to contribute again. Across from him, Diana didn't flinch. Andre sat beside her, the paperwork already printed. He'd anticipated the ask. So had she. Ethan, Andre said carefully, you've received the formal update from HR. Ethan nodded. I saw it. Then you know this isn't personal, it's structural. Ethan turned to his mother. Is that what this is to you? Structure? Diana finally met his gaze. It became personal when you rewrote the history I lived. The silence in the room wasn't cold. It was final. Your C-suite access is formally revoked, Andre continued. No board eligibility, no strategic contract roles, internal or external. You're welcome to apply through standard channels, but all internal hiring structures are sealed. You've sealed me out, Ethan said, voice sharp now. No, Diana said evenly. You took yourself out, we just documented it. He blinked, then stood. You're unbelievable. No, she said again. I'm consistent. A week later, he took a job at a mid-sized competitor. No equity, no strategic leadership. Just a mid-level operational role with a nice title and no power. The press release was 2 sentences long. His name came second. When Riley read it, she laughed, then stopped, and cried. You're folding, she said that night. We were supposed to fight. Ethan didn't look up from his drink. I fought, he said. I lost. She didn't need to kill us. She just waited us out. Riley's voice dropped. You let her. He didn't answer, because she was right. In Diana's kitchen, Kayla leaned against the counter, slicing strawberries for a tart she was making from scratch. He took the job, she asked. Yes, Diana said. He'll say he wasn't given a chance. He was given too many, Kayla. That's what entitlement is. The belief that a door should open again just because you've knocked twice. Kayla paused, hands still. They'll never apologize, will they? She asked quietly. No, Diana said. And they don't have to. A long pause. Then why not forgive them? Diana met her eyes. Not coldly, not bitterly. Because forgiveness would imply they mattered to the outcome. At his new office, Ethan stared out the 12th floor window at a skyline he used to believe belonged to him. No one invited him to strategy briefings. No one asked him to speak at panels. He still had his suits, his haircut, his bio, but it all felt like scaffolding left up after the building was gone. He scrolled his phone, no new emails, no meeting requests. Then one pinged. From HR quarterly self-evaluation reminder. He opened it, then closed it. Across town, Lillian leaned against the railing on Diana's terrace as dusk washed over the city. You think they'll fade? She asked. They already have, Diana said. They'll rewrite this too, Lillian murmured. Tell a softer version. Frame it like a misstep. They can, Diana said. But it won't stick. The internet has a longer memory than they do. Lillian sipped her tea. Kayla stepped out behind them. Barefoot, still glowing from her first internship interview. How'd it go? Lillian asked. Kayla smiled. They said my references were the most powerful part. They are? Diana said quietly. Later that night, Ethan opened an old interview clip of himself and Riley. Smiling, polished, telling the story for the 100th time. He watched the footage in silence, then clicked delete. The invitation arrived in an envelope, cream stock, embossed lettering, not a mass email, not a LinkedIn message. Personal, it read, March Tech invites Diana March to rejoin the company in an official advisory capacity as founder emeritus. Title, Executive Mentor in Residence Term. Indefinite location. Flexible compensation declined by recipient. Diana read it once. Then again, then set it down beside her coffee without smiling. The announcement dropped 3 days later. Tech matriarch returns to the table. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The press release was 3 paragraphs long, understated and sharp. After a decade of quiet oversight and systemic rebuilding, Diana March has accepted a ceremonial leadership role as founder emeritus. She will advise the MarchTech leadership team and mentor selected accelerator fellows, with no involvement in daily operations. The move reflects a formal acknowledgement of her unmatched foundational contributions to the company and the industry at large. They didn't use words like comeback, because she'd never left. A week later, she sat down for her only interview, with Forbes. The interviewer, a soft-spoken woman in her 30s, asked questions carefully, deliberately. "How did it feel," she asked, "watching your story return to you?" Diana didn't blink. "Silence isn't weakness," she said. "Sometimes it's a trapdoor." The quote trended in minutes. A new generation started printing it on tote bags. In Evanston, Illinois, a beige rental sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac, quiet, forgettable. Inside, Riley stacked books into crates she hadn't labeled. Her hands moved slowly, like she couldn't remember the purpose behind each one. Ethan stood at the window, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at a backyard he hadn't mowed. "This isn't a fall," Riley muttered. "It's a reset." Ethan didn't answer. She turned. "Isn't it?" Still nothing. Outside, a child rode past on a scooter, laughing. For a second, they both just watched. Neither of them smiled. At MarchTech HQ, Lillian leaned against the railing of the mezzanine, watching interns try not to trip over their own enthusiasm. Beside her, Diana adjusted a stack of scholarship applications. "They're not struggling," Lillian said. "They're remembering." Diana glanced over. "Evanston?" Lillian nodded. "Kayla says they barely leave the house." "Sometimes irrelevance isn't exile," Diana said. "It's just gravity catching up." Lillian smirked. "That quote's not going to fit on a tote bag." "No," Diana said, "but it'll last longer." Later that evening, Kayla walked into the loft, mail in one hand, a half-eaten croissant in the other. "Your interview's still trending," she said, dropping both on the counter. "Someone stitched it with old footage of you in 2004. You looked meaner." "I was," Diana said. "Do you want to see it?" "No," Kayla shrugged. "It's pretty good." "I'm not vengeful," Diana added. "I'm accurate." Kayla smiled. "I know." They didn't talk about Riley anymore, or Ethan. It wasn't a rule. It just wasn't relevant. Back in Evanston, Riley opened a LinkedIn alert. "Your network has celebrated Diana March's new role." She stared at it for a long time, then hit dismiss. The screen went back to gray. Kayla's dorm room was smaller than the brochure made it seem. A brick cube with blonde wood furniture and a window that faced the side of another building. Still, she looked around like it was the top floor of a skyline view. "This one," she said, standing by the corner desk. "This feels like home base." Diana set down the storage bin she'd been carrying. "Then start from here." There were no speeches, no long embraces, just quiet arrangements, books stacked, mugs unwrapped, bedding smoothed down. On the desk sat a printed internship badge, face up. Kayla Brighton, MarchTech Fellow. She'd earned it, the hard way, the real way. Diana glanced at the small corkboard above the desk. Tacked to it were 3 photos, Kayla and Lillian in the MarchTech courtyard, Kayla with her younger brother, and in the center, a black and white image of a younger Diana, not posed, not filtered, just mid-sentence back in the 1990s, hands stained with ink and code. "Where did you even find that?" Diana asked. "Lillian," Kayla said, grinning. She called it the real founding photo. Diana said nothing, just nodded once. She didn't need to be in the room anymore. In the MarchTech lobby, sunlight glinted off the founder wall. It hadn't always existed. For years, it had been a donor display, names carved into panels, arranged by funding tier. Now it was just one name. Diana March founder. 1997. Vision, build what doesn't yet exist. And bring others with you. The photo beside it was the same one from Kayla's board. Visitors passed by without slowing. Not out of disrespect, out of recognition. She didn't need to be reintroduced. She was part of the building now. Riley's inbox had been quiet for weeks, her calendar unbooked, her notifications dim. The world had not canceled her. It had simply outgrown the version of her story she kept trying to sell. She no longer received event invites. No podcast asked for comment. Even the passive mentions, the "what happened to" threads, had moved on. The joke that once made her feel clever, that line about Diana being the old guest who never leaves, had vanished from memory. No one quoted it now, no one laughed. Because jokes only survive if the truth doesn't change. Diana stood across the street from March Tech one last time. The building glowed under mid-morning light, quiet, alive. She watched as a group of interns filtered through the revolving door, laughing, clutching laptops, rushing toward lives they didn't know they were starting yet. She didn't wave, didn't go in, she turned and kept walking. That evening, Lillian joined her on the terrace. 2 glasses of sparkling water, a bowl of olives, and the kind of silence that meant nothing needed to be said, just respected. "You didn't destroy them," Lillian said, not as a compliment, just a fact. Diana nodded. "I clarified the credits and reclaimed the story." Diana tilted her glass in agreement. A breeze stirred across the patio. Somewhere in the kitchen, Kayla was laughing into a phone call. It was hers now, whatever came next. Later, Diana sat alone at her desk, one light on, a pen in hand. No need for a keyboard tonight. She opened a fresh journal and wrote, "At my son's promotion party. His wife joked that I was the old guest who never leaves. She stopped smiling when she found out I owned the company that promoted him." She closed the notebook, not as a period, but as a signature.